Okay. So my talk tonight is on a wonderful subject, one of my favorite subjects, the 5 daily recollections. And these come right out of one of the Buddha's talks. So they're directly his words. I'd like to share my screen and just show these. Well, you know what I think I'll do? I think I'll paste these in the chat right now in case any of you want to copy them and have them in your own little file. So I pasted them there. But I'm also going to share my screen so you don't have to do anything. You can just watch. Can you all see that? Thumbs up? You can see it? I'm just going to assume you can see it unless somebody unmutes and tells me they can't. So the Buddha listed these 5 daily recollections, and he suggested that we should reflect on each one of them every single day, that it would be very helpful. So let me read them to you. I am of the nature to grow old. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to become ill. I have not gone beyond illness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond death. All that is mine, dear and delightful, shall vanish and be gone. I am the owner of my karma. I am born of my karma. I live supported by my karma. Whatever I do, skillful or unskillful, so shall I inherit. I used to say these to myself at the start of every meditation session. I found them such a beautiful expression of impermanence. So this talk tonight is in large part about impermanence. The first 4 of the recollections are about impermanence. The last one's a little different, about karma. The Buddha said that if we don't come to terms with aging, with illness, with death, we are likely to live in a way that can do harm to ourselves and others, and that we will accumulate karma and suffering if we refuse to look these difficult facts in the face. So if anything's confusing, I don't really mind if you unmute yourself and interrupt me and ask me a question. Or you can save them for the end. Old age, sickness, death. Sounds like bad news, huh? I remember when my dad was in his 90s. One day I got all my courage together and I asked him, Dad, when you die, do you want to be buried or cremated? And my dad said, could we discuss something a little bit less morbid? That was not helpful, Dad, wherever you are. People see death as a morbid subject to be avoided. So why did the Buddha and other spiritual leaders from all different paths and religions recommend that we hold these possibly difficult facts close to our hearts? That we sit with them? That we work to come to some kind of peace with them? The Buddha lived close to these truths, and in part they were the key to his wisdom. Ram Dass said, during life, keep death on your shoulder. And many other spiritual teachers have echoed this same words. If you know the poet Rilke, you probably like him as much as I do. He's an Austrian. He wrote in German. I sometimes think of him as an enlightened being. Here's a quote. Death is our friend, precisely because it brings us into absolute and passionate presence with all that there is, all that is here, that is natural, that is love. So I take this to mean that when we are at one with our own mortality, we don't take things for granted. We know that each moment of our lives is a gift, and we can be passionate about being present to it all. As I mentioned, the 5 daily recollections are from one of the Buddha's talks, one of the suttas. In other words, these are the Buddha's own words. So you'll come across these if you Google the 5 daily recollections. Some people call them the 5 daily reflections. You'll see them phrased in a wide variety of language. I really like this language. I've always liked this particular language for them. I got it from Lee Brasington many years ago, and I've always found it the most moving of any of the translations. But look around, you may find some that you like more. The Buddha called impermanence the elephant's footprint. Maybe bigger even, huh? He said that the elephant's footprint is so large it encompasses all other footprints. So by calling impermanence the elephant's footprint, he was saying that contemplating impermanence is the supreme contemplation, because it's a contemplation that includes everything else. Everything that arises is subject to passing. Everything that comes goes. So in our practice, we're asked to consider this and reflect on it. I love John Travis's term for our bodies. He calls it a rent-a-body. You may have heard him say that. We live in this rent-a-body. So, it's much better to own your house than to rent it, isn't it? Well, maybe not, because there's some advantages. When you own a place, you are very identified with it, possibly. It's more of a different feeling. But when you rent a place, you'll be there a while and you'll move on. You don't have to get so identified with it. It's not really a reflection of who you are inside. And the main thing is that a rented place is beyond your total control. So you don't get so caught up with it. Wouldn't that be a great attitude to bring to our lives? It's beyond our total control. Let's not get so caught up in controlling every single thing about it. We want to own our houses. We want to control everything. We want to have insurance in case anything goes wrong. Security. We want to be secure. And now with COVID, never mind rent-a-body, it's starting to look like a rent-a-world. The vulnerability of the entire human race is making itself felt for all of us now. We could simply vanish from the face of the earth. It doesn't seem that impossible, does it? This is coming home to us like never before. And as we get older, we notice and confirm the body is a rented property. And what I've been noticing lately is that it might be a rent-a-mind as well. There's a lot of things I can't remember lately. I don't have the same kind of control over my mind that I used to. And we don't know what happens to our consciousness when we die. But there's certainly an option, a possibility, that our consciousness disappears from existence. That is very hard for me to fathom. I don't know about you, but what? My consciousness gone? How could that be? A lot of things disappear from existence all the time, but not me. Helen Keller was born without sight and without hearing and yet she lived a remarkable life. She once said, "Security is mostly a superstition. It doesn't exist in nature, and nor do the children of mankind on the whole experience it. In the long run, avoiding danger is no safer than outright exposure. Life is either a glorious adventure or it is nothing." Of all the recollections, the third one, it is very touching to me. I'll read it to you. "All that is mine, dear and delightful, will vanish and be gone." That means, like, ultimately we have to let go of everything. This always makes me think of the golem, if you saw Lord of the Rings. And the golem, he called the ring "my precious." So I always laugh. My husband and I laugh when we get attached to something and we'll show it to the other person and say, "Look, my precious." So many my precious things. But we attach to these things. So these are difficult to come to grips with. And I think many people live their lives, like my dad. Let's not talk about something morbid like that. I'm not saying that my dad didn't come to terms with things. I think he did. But at that moment, because it's very easy to feel sorrow and grief and to suffer over these facts that we get old, that we get ill, and that we die, and that everything we have is taken away from us. And now, with the world caught up in this pandemic, and the environment isn't even a word that existed when I was a kid. The environment is no longer an abstraction, but it's just a series of red alerts, isn't it? The air's not safe, a hurricane is coming, a flood, a fire is coming our way. We get overwhelmed by all of these difficulties now on our plate with the environment and its impermanence. And also politics of our own country and of around the world. I mean, yeah, impermanence, but not democracy. Are you kidding? Democracy should be permanent. So there's danger, and it's natural for us to feel afraid and feel fear of losing what we care about, fear of losing the people we care about. We want to run away from this, and it's very tempting to not take this on fully, to not come face to face with this. When someone close to us dies, we have to face it. It's right there. But most of our lives, we don't want to live with the visceral truth of this reality. The Buddha lived close to this truth, and it was part of the key to his wisdom. And he told us to live close to this truth as well. I would like to go back a little more to the Sutta, because I think it's useful to get acquainted with some of the contents of the Sutta. And this particular Sutta, the Buddha recommends that we recollect each of these facts daily. And in the Sutta, he asks, what is the advantage of reviewing each of these things? What is the advantage of saying, I'm not exempt from old age? He speaks of the vanity of youth. What a phrase. I love that phrase. When we're young, we're discovering who we are. Who we are is everything, so exciting. We're self-absorbed. We're building a life. We're becoming a person. We're intoxicated with this vanity of youth. And when we are intoxicated, we can do things that are harmful to ourselves and others. So the Buddha warned about that. He also talked about being drunk on the vanity of health, feeling like we're going to live forever, being drunk on the vanity of life, never facing that we have to die. And he also said, relative to the fourth recollection, all that is mine, dear and delightful, attachments to these things that we hold dear can arouse our lust and desire. What about the karma? The fifth one is different, isn't it? When someone realizes that their actions return to them through karma, they may be more careful. So all of these, not facing any one of these things, is closely related to the karma that we're building for ourselves. At the end of the sutta, the Buddha says, we realize that it's not just ourselves who are subject to these laws of illness, of aging, of death, but it's all of us, all sentient beings, he said. And this awakens our compassion because we can feel for each other and feel our connection together, that we're all facing these difficult facts together. The mind has a subtle tendency to take the current situation as permanent. Just a simple example of that, last weekend we went away to the coast. I looked up on the web. I knew it was going to be hot in Bodega Bay. But it was cold in Auburn. It was 58 degrees. So I packed sweatpants and heavy sweaters and heavy socks. And I just couldn't believe that it wasn't going to be cold when I got there. Of course, I got there and I had to wear the same shirt every day because it was hot. I just couldn't imagine weather different from the weather right now. And that, I thought, it was a good example of this subtle tendency of the mind to take the current situation as permanent. So, we walk around in this life, we go to the store, we run our errands, we talk to friends, all predicated on this, that we're living this idea that we will be here forever and that things are never going to change. That's how I live a lot of the time. When I wake up and I become present, then I realize, and everything changes. Because when we're in that state of taking everything as if it would last forever, as if the current situation were permanent, we take things for granted. But when we realize that everything that arises passes away, it changes things. A little story from the Bhagavad Gita. This is a 22nd century or so. It's a conversation between Prince Arjuna and his charioteer Krishna. Krishna represents wisdom. Arjuna is the prince, and his charioteer and guide Krishna is the one to whom he turns for advice. There's a scene where they have a conversation and Arjuna asks Krishna, with your amazing vision of the world, what is the greatest miracle in this universe? And Krishna answers, although people see others dying all around them, they somehow believe it will not happen to them. I think that's the most amazing thing in the world. I agree. We just live as if it's never going to happen to me. We fail to notice. I want to recommend an app to you on your phone. It's called We Croak. Okay, CROAK. And the We Croak app sends you 5 sentences every day about death. And, when you go there, you see one of them. So you don't get deluged or anything. But it reminds me every day about this true state, and I need reminders. So we're asked to enter into our lives in this spirit. In this spirit. This is the journey we're embarked upon. Can we grasp the full reality of our mortality and our lives? You know, our very sense of beauty is connected to this briefness. Why is a flower beautiful? Because it's so brief. Fake flowers are never as good, are they? They're permanent, but they're fake because they're never going to be gone. A flower touches us because it's alive and it's going to die. Another example is the sunset. The sunset is so beautiful because it lasts a moment. You look away and all that pink is now turned gray. It's so beautiful because it's so fast. So our sense of beauty is very connected to this briefness. Because it's not forever, our life is precious. We don't know how it will end, but we know that it will. So when we open to impermanence, we open to this sweetness of a flower, the sweetness of a dawn. Just a quote to end with from the Diamond Sutra. Thus you should look upon this fleeting world, a drop of dew, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream.